Hello, I hope everyone finds themselves doing well. Beautiful day here in northern lower Michigan. Just nice and sunny and just very pleasant out. Nice 50 degrees. So a couple weeks ago, I wanted to talk about a problem I had where I was on my way to go pick something up and I had hopped on the highway and I had just, the highway's about a mile and a half out of town. And I got on the entrance ramp and it's just merging on. And I noticed an abundance of smoke trailing behind me and coming in the cab and underneath the hood. And then the gauges on the dash lit up. No oil pressure, low oil pressure. Things started flashing. I immediately pulled off to the side of the road and shut the vehicle off. Kind of unsure at first what I had blown. I didn't know if it was engine oil or if it was the transmission, because these Dodges have these 8-9 speeds in them, and the fluid isn't red. It's a golden color, so it looks a lot like engine oil. Well, I didn't want to start the vehicle and take any chances, not knowing if something had gone in the engine or I had a cooling hose that had broke. So I had it towed. I had it towed to a shop. He wasn't able to get to it for over a week. He finally got to it. Pulled it in and ended up finding out I use Fram, and one of my past couple of ones with the Valvoline Restore and Protect, saw how I use Fram, and I got criticized for that a little bit. But so with Fram filters, and everyone says they're junk. Well, I really can't find anything, or I can't find anything that definitively says that this is a bad oil filter. I found where oil filters fail, no matter what manufacturer they are. I have found where some oil filters have failed. I've never found anything where they've blown apart. What I have found is where there's been problems with gaskets. Talked to the guy that worked on it. He'd been wrenching for 20 plus years. He said he's never seen anything like this. Well, what it did is it sprayed the oil where it sits on a HEMI. It sits vertically like this, and one of these dips right here had made it so that it was pointing right towards the front of the firewall, or the core support right in front of the radiator. And this is where it had failed. And the gasket, when he took it off, the gasket was curled. It was curled up a little bit like this. And it looks like when it got screwed on, it pushed down in there but didn't seat properly in here. Rolled over a little bit. He threw the filter away. So I don't have the filter to... He said, well, you know, because I use particular filters and oils, and I didn't want to go and pay for another filter when I already had a whole bunch at home. So I went home and grabbed the oil that I have, the Valvoline Advanced, and another filter, and brought him the filter. And he said, well, are you sure you want to put one on? I was like, yeah, I'll just check the gasket. So the gasket had curled over. Well, I had somebody help me 2 months ago change the oil in the pickup. I couldn't get I was having a bad day. I started to change it, and I could not get the filter off. So a neighbor came over, and he had a heck of a time because there's lines that run to the radiator from the transmission that are in the way, and you have to come up and go around the lines and fish it through and get it up in there, and then you got the steering rack, and so you have a lot of things in the way to get this filter mounted up on the engine. So I told him, I said, well, no, you got to come over here and put your arm around here. Well, he kept getting it caught on, and he couldn't get it. I have a little sneaky suspicion that when he was trying to get it and thread it up, that when he was coming across, he somehow or another curled up on the gasket. And when he screwed it in, for some reason or other, it just didn't seal properly. It didn't fit back down in there. It had rolled over on itself a little bit. But the odd is this is how the gasket looked. It was outside of the ring and pushed down, and so it didn't. It went down inside here and blew out from underneath here. So I think that's what happened, is that he fishing it up in there to screw it in. He hit this somehow, and it got pinched over, and then when he tightened it up, it did something wonky and didn't fit in there right. So I've been using Fram, I'll state it again because I've stated it in some of my other videos on different things. I have 5 vehicles. 3 of them get oil changes every 3 to 4 months, every 3 to 4,000, just over 30, 36, 35, 34 to 4,000 miles. So that happens every 3 to 4 months. A rural area, when my bride drives to work, she literally drives just over 100 miles a day. It's just over 50 miles one way, and it's just over 50 miles another way. That's not including her other day job. So she drives one vehicle to her day job, and we rotate vehicles. But one gets driven a lot more to the other job 6 days a week because it's our oldest vehicle in the fleet. It's the 2012 Explorer. It's the oldest vehicle, and if she hits a deer or something happens with that vehicle, we've both decided that that won't be as big as a loss as one of the much newer vehicles that we have, or the expenditure to, so we've just both decided that's got well over 200,000 miles on it. Let's just continue to drive that. And she drives that to her other job. And that's just what we've decided. So the talk, everyone says that Fram is junk. I cannot find anything that backs anything up that says that this is a junk filter. They make 3 different variations of the filters. They have their orange ones, which are the cheapest, and obviously they're have less filtering material. They're made cheaper, but that's the reason why they're $5. Then they make the Tough Guard, and there's a reason why this is a $9 filter. It's a little bit heavier duty, has the coating on here. It has a steel cage inside. So, and then they have the Extra Guard, which is $4 more, or in my area. So what I do is I look for these things on sale. And if I get low, I'm down to a couple, and I see that they're, $7. Well, I go and I purchase 4 of them because that'll get me through 2 oil changes a piece in the pickups. So that'll get through half a year. Same thing with the other Explorer. And unfortunately, every vehicle takes a different filter. So I look for whatever's on sale. So now I just need to be more wary, making sure that the gasket is seated. When I put a ring of oil, whether it's new or used oil. To me, it doesn't matter. I just put a little bit of lubricant on there. It seems that seems like every time I put some oil on the gasket, the O-ring here, it seems to come off a little easier. And the times that I don't, or somebody else changes the oil for me and they don't put anything on the O-ring, it's kind of a bear to get them off. Or I have to struggle to get them off, or I can't, and I have to have somebody come and get it off for me. So Fram, it's just there's different levels to their filters. It's just like Wix. Wix has different levels to their filters. Their air filters. And so I don't know why people just pick on one thing and say that this is just an awful filter. It's gone down in quality. Well, it's a quality filter to me. It has X amount of pleats. It has, but things go wrong. Stuff happens. You can get something bad, obviously, right out of the box. You can install something and not install it correctly and create a problem and have a problem go wrong. So I'm going to continue to use the Fram filters, but what I have found, and Walmart has had Purelator, the Boss filters, on sale. So I went and I stocked up on them. $8 for almost a $15 filter. They were on rollback for $8. So I went and I loaded up enough for the pickups and for the 2 new Explorers and the older Explorer. And now they have their gold ones. Their next Purelator has the gold can one, the next filter down, which I would compare to the Tough Guard here. They're rollback right now for $7. So I went and I got 2 of each of those. So I'm stocked up now for the rest of 25. I'm going to be changing oil here in November. Everything's going to get an oil change in November, which is coming up here. So sometime before mid-November, the 15th of November, I want to get all the oils changed in all vehicles to get us through the winter, to get us into, end of or beginning of February, mid-February, and maybe, can end up finding a nice day in there and get one changed, or I'll have to take it to one of the local or a shop or something and pay them to have to change the oil. So I'm not crawling around on the snow, and so I don't have a garage that's big enough to pull pickups in and work inside. So I'm still going to continue to use the Fram filters. I've used I have power equipment. I have my 2 Cub Cadet lawnmowers with 24 horse coilers on them, and I've been using the Fram filters on them since the one was new in 15 and got the other one in 21. I'm using Fram filters on them, and I've used Fram filters. Again, what I'll go back to if I can find something on sale. I have 5 vehicles, and somebody will, I don't know why you use this oil or why you use these filters. Well, I don't have a full stock Kmart. Our Kmart, the automotive section is pretty small, and sometimes you just can't. Sometimes I struggle to find wiper blades, and the same thing too with some of the auto parts stores. Or I can buy this filter at Walmart for $8, $9, $10, but I go to an auto parts store and it's $12, or their brand, whether it's O'Reilly's or something like that. And so things aren't always readily available in my area like they may be in yours. You might have the luxury of having 3 O'Reilly stores within a few miles of each other, or a Napa, or AutoZone, AutoWorks. You might have the luxury of having a lot of these stores, so if one's out of it or not carrying it, the other one probably will, and it's not a very far drive for you. When we were growing up in the metropolitan area, there were a lot of auto parts stores, and you could find things, and you didn't have to drive. To drive to just the one town, for us, it's 25 miles. The other one's over 50 miles. So, an hour trip one way. So that's what I mean. When people say, well, you should use this type of gasoline, you should use these filters, why are you switching oil? I'm going to start using things, or I've been using things that are available to us in our area. I have no choice. I can't drive in 1 hour one way to go to a store because they have, somebody said, well, we'll go to Napa. Well, I'm not driving all the way to the Napa, and that oil at Napa may be made by Valvoline, like the comment was, but it's also more expensive than what I can get 5 quarts at Walmart. So why am I going to drive further, pay $30 for 5 quarts, when I can pick it up for $26 and only be gone for a half hour, 40 minutes? So, It's just people, when you guys watch these things or when somebody talks about stuff, you have to remember we all live somewhere different. And sometimes I used to hear old timers say that, something that makes people smart or dumb is all depends on where you came from and what you called things or what you're accustomed or used to or what you had available to you. Oh, that's just it. I'm still going to continue to use Fram. I have so many of them. I'm going to use up what I have, and then I'll go to the Purolator. But I'm going to pay much more attention now to the gasket to make sure it's seated. When I rub my hand, before I put any oil on anything, I'm just going to make sure that the gasket and the O-ring, or the O-ring here, is seated well. I'll put my oil on it, and when somebody helps me, they're going to have to listen to me when I tell them you have to be underneath the vehicle here, put your arm up through here and come around, and it's right there, instead of trying to go the backside and you're squeezing your hand and this thing in between hoses and the steering rack and everything, and you're jamming it in there and it won't fit. You come around up front top and put your arm around. And so I wish that I didn't have to ask anyone to help me, or when I try and do something on my own and run into a problem where I don't have enough strength, or I just run out of oomph the rest of the day. So I have several of the Tough Guard. I have several of the extra guards, and then I'm going to switch to these. I'll use the Purolator, but I'm just going to continue to keep buying filters that are available to me and are at a cheaper price. Because again, I have 5 vehicles. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 things, 6 pieces of power equipment that take oil filters on them. And funny thing is that the cross reference, because they're all Kohlers, and the cross reference is the 3614, the Tough Guard 36, a Mopar. When you cross reference from a Kohler number to, it cross references to a Mopar 3614, which is the old 2225s back in the 90s. So I stock up on them, and I use the orange can one for my power equipment. And I change my power equipment. I change my oil springtime before I take it out from storage. First thing I do is I change the oil. Usually right about now, when I'm getting leaves or we're getting into winter or something, I change the oil again. Most everything, the bigger Kohlers take 2 quarts. Most everything else takes just a quart or a little bit less than a quart. So a few dollars in protection for the winter, for the oil not sitting there and getting acidic or something, or whatever could happen. It's just easy enough for me. And I've been lazy in the spring, and I've pulled stuff out and used it, and knowing that there's fresh oil in it that hardly has any time on it at all, just a little bit of time just to run it and put it up, or run the fuel out of the carburetor. Well, I'm going to continue on using the Frams. I have, I think enough for 2 oil changes a piece on the pickups of the Tough Guard, and then I have a couple extra guards, and then I'm going to go into the Purolators. But I bought them, and they were on sale, and every time I had a little bit of extra, and I saw that they're still on rollback, I went and I ordered some. So if you want to say that Fram ruins things or is no good, I haven't had that happen. I think what happened was it was human error. I think that this O-ring because I put the oil on the O-ring and handed it to him. And when he was sneaking it through there, I think somehow or another it got pinched and he dragged it across because he had a hard time finding to screw it in. And I think he pinched this in there, and it got pulled down and pinched and rolled over a little bit and blew out. But here's the kicker too. This filter on that truck was on there for just over a month, and I think recall about 300 miles I had driven before that. before the O-ring there decided that it wasn't going to be an O-ring anymore. So that's my little rant on Fram filters. There's a lot of guys on here that tear them apart and everything, and they count them, and they count the pleats, and check the thickness of the can, and the end cap and everything. And I don't know where really any of that makes a difference or how much they weigh. But I still have never found anything where a can is split or anything catastrophic has happened. You know, if you want to call what I had, this O-ring being catastrophic, well, it was catastrophic to me at first because I had 7 quarts of oil everywhere. Because when it let go, the oil just went everywhere. And I wish he hadn't thrown the can away, or the oil filter away. And then a whole bunch of other stuff had got dumped on top of. They had swept the floor and done a whole bunch of other things. And I wasn't going to dig through the trash, and he wasn't going to either. He said if I wanted that oil filter back, I would have to go in after it. I wasn't about to. So I wish I had it to show it. I would have liked to have wiped it off and seen how, if the gasket had actually blown out or if it had been curled over and pinched. But that's my theory. I'm just going to keep an eye on them. But using a Fram filter for 30 plus years, I've used Fram filters on and off. And this is my first ever problem with any type of filter. So that's it. I still think that Fram filters are a decent filter to use. You know, you have different quality and different grades, just like most other manufacturers do too with filters. All right, that's my take on Fram. So take care. Like and subscribe, please.